was just doing the Vivian process.
Oh, you went and did it because Tyler had canceled it.
No, he said to be careful.
Are you ready yet?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right, hello and welcome. You brave souls who came out despite the rain. Before we start, I want to introduce Craig Kennard, who is the township engineer and responsible for doing all this work to create new ordinances or amended ordinances over the past several years. So as we run through these, he's going to be here to answer any questions.
I'll chime in whenever anybody has a question, or if you want some further explanation about zoning, SAUDO, how it applies, I'll do that as well as an educational component.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Approval of minutes. Everybody read the minutes from last time? Margaret had sent them out. Do I have a motion to
Approve the minutes. I'll second it.
okay. All in favor? That was Lucy. Okay. And Carol seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. Election of vice chair. We have sort of been floating and operating without a vice chair since Brooke Newborn switched over to the park board. But Margaret keeps telling me, look, you really need to get a vice chair. So we need to do that. Do I have a motion for anyone for vice chair?
I would like to motion Carol Westerman to be the vice chair.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Any other nominations? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, Carol, you're it. The vice chair sits in and runs the meeting if the chair isn't here. And by the way, July 2nd, there will be.
Probably a good one to cancel.
Yeah,
4th of July
I was
week.
thinking,
It is the 4th of July week.
I won't be here.
Okay, so status of projects that, you know, we put into the grant, many of you were at the garden meeting when we worked on getting the information to put in the grant. And they acknowledged it, and I haven't heard anything. They were happy to get it, exclamation points. But I talked to somebody on the inside and they said, oh, this is a slow process. They're not that organized, so not to worry. It's just there. They're doing their thing. Apparently, they don't usually turn down an EAC. So I think we have a good chance there. Yeah. Now, the township building front bank from Buck's Beautiful grant. You know that we asked for permission. We asked if the park board would work along with us, which they said they would, to put in a Buck's Beautiful grant to plant the front bank. And the township is fine with us doing this. Lucy and I measured the front bank, and this is my attempt at a scale drawing. The garden committee will meet next week, and we'll work on species. Okay, so we can, yeah, a list, so because we have to include a species list with the grant and a budget. So how many of this, how many of that, how much does it cost? Add it up. Here's our total cost. Here's what we suggest putting in for volunteer hours. Did you know you're worth $33 and some cents an hour?
I charge for
You do that.
Kathleen, I just want to bring up one point which we had discussed,
Mm.
and that is we are in the process, and speaking of things moving slowly, government moves slowly. But we've created a facilities committee. And they will be meeting with the architect that had been brought in 2 years ago.
2 years.
And had come up with a plan that nobody was behind. It was, it was a wish list of prior manager, chief, etc. But we do need to do something about our police department. Facilities have been, continue to be inadequate. So we know that we are probably looking at building onto this building.
but not in the front.
We don't know.
We don't know. I don't think so. I don't think that would be the appropriate place
So,
to move, but I just would say that whatever we're putting in, I would not plant trees or shrubs.
Ooh,
one of the things we have to look at with the front of the building is the grade. And we want to avoid having to put an elevator in because of the cost. So to do that, you would address that grade out front in some way, shape, or form. So
The ramp
I
is
just
there.
think that anything that's done out front, you just need to be careful that it may not be there or it may be changed in the way it,
so.
let's just,
Got the shrub.
Look-
Right, I was gonna say, perennials are easier.
let's just assume that we go through with this project. The earliest the shovel will go in the ground is 27. So just given the time frame of planning, design, and all that good stuff.
You're being optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm being
Yeah,
optimistic,
I was
but
gonna say that's
but
pretty
still, that's the
optimistic.
earliest. That's what I'm saying. So I wouldn't do anything that is permanent,
Not
is
to
what I'm
mention-
saying. All right.
Mainly
not to mention
trees.
Just to give us-
funding.
Just to give us
We're gonna put trees
the,
up there.
the flexibility, if we need to do something out there, we have
I was
that.
thinking of some shrubs, but tell me this one thing. Beyond there are some large shrubs already there. There's some
Mhm.
Amelanchier and some Itea. On the other side of that, there's still a pretty broad swath. Probably, and it's pretty flat.
Yeah.
I think
Could put a couple
I would
flowers
just be, I wouldn't do anything permanent right now.
I think the portion from the steps over to this side is probably not going to change a lot. But I think the portion from the steps over there is.
Where the ramp is.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we
I'm
need to
Gonna change the
have
ramp.
the flexibility and not have to worry.
Oh, well, there wasn't gonna be anything big on that ramp.
No,
side anyway.
it just, we're just putting it out there. I need that flexibility.
We will confirm. We will confirm.
Okay, that's all.
We will put together
Just
several
what- just-
options
and
and
we-
we will confirm.
And we had talked about that possibility
Yes.
anyway,
Yes,
some
but
time
I
ago.
thought that you had said the front of the building was off the table.
Well, at that point, it probably was. I think at this point, it might be back on. I don't really see how we can build on to that on the front, but we certainly have to do something about the accessibility.
The entry.
I believe even now it's out of compliance with the ADA.
Yeah.
We can move perennials though. That's fine.
yeah.
Okay,
It could
that'd be great.
Saturday, yes.
That's fine.
Don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
That's all. Just wanted to bring it to your attention.
And if we're looking to put a shrub or two in, we'll talk to them.
Even with a year's
And I do think 2027
It's
is
from-
probably extremely optimistic.
Okay.
But it could be.
It could, I said,
Possibly.
I said the earliest.
Okay. We have to move on because we have ordinances.
Okay.
Yes, please.
A-Day, I just passed around the sign-up sheet, and as I said, I'm gonna send it out to the whole group, my email list anyway, because some people aren't here, and I'm pretty sure will volunteer too.
Getting nauseous,
And then-
looking at myself
If
upside
you're
down.
new, don't worry, you'd be with somebody who was, a
Alex will fix
veteran
it.
of this kind of stuff. I got the Enviroscape that we had for the fall festival, and we have at Keller's Truck. Yep. Uh,
What's
oh,
Zoom.
So they.
She sent
they
me
got the
instructions.
spot.
but I can't
It's a
figure it
double
out.
spot. Yeah, I just got the email today. Yeah, yeah.
When is that? What are the dates?
The dates are the 25th, 26th, and 27th, right? Who's got the sign up sheet? Is that right? Yeah. And it's all day, every day almost. I mean, it's a lot.
Except Friday. I think it doesn't start till,
Actually, on the website.
It's
it
all
says
day
from
Friday.
eight, which is-
Really?
It's all
I
day
know.
Friday.
they used to start in the afternoon.
No, it's not.
That's
It's
the
all day
camera.
Friday.
But it doesn't do
Okay.
anything.
So we'll talk more about that.
Just
So
stop.
it is.
Yeah, we have a problem with our April meeting. We're gonna be missing Carol and Lucy because Doug Talmy had to.
We'll just say, she said she can flip it.
I said we should give people tickets and just have the meeting there.
Have the meeting there.
Video
Would that were
settings.
legal.
Rotating your signature.
I don't think it's a problem. How many people tune in?
Just takes me back.
If we were going to change it, we can't, we were thinking of having this next week, but they're ripping the rugs out here. We can't have this room.
We have a window of like 8 days to work on the room with no meetings.
That's fine.
Is there-
That's when we did the painting.
I was kidding. I said, why don't you give your ticket?
Would it be
Sit down.
possible to have a small meeting in the little conference room?
Yeah, there's no way to tape it though.
We may have to just have just a couple of us. We may have to do it. All right. I don't know what else to say about that. If anybody comes up with an ingenious solution before the meeting's over, let me know.
What about the week
Tickets.
prior?
Like 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now?
No, that's our busy weeks.
Seriously?
Mhm.
Okay. It's not on this list, but the Easter egg hunt is April 12th, and we will be having a table there. Basically, we did it last year too, just handing out, have a display, I'll do the flyer for the rain barrel, which I'm going to talk about next, and information. If anybody has any ideas about that or wants to help, it's only a few hours that morning. And then the rain barrel workshop will be May 3rd. There will be a sign-up sheet posted on the web. Will the new website be up at that point?
May 3rd, yes.
No. Well, yes, but how about April when the sign-up sheet would go up about?
We are anticipating, we're targeting the end of March.
Oh, good, that would be great.
So I was asked if you guys have a flyer that we can post now.
I was going to ask if we could. post
Yeah,
a
if you could
flyer.
send something to Alex and Sue.
Yes.
I was asked to ask that today.
Okay. Excellent.
Wait, can we back up a second? What did we decide about the meeting April 2nd? Is it not flexible or are we gonna work on it?
Have any suggestions?
Not really.
We have to look at the calendar, but you could always just cancel it.
Carol, are you at a booth?
I'm tabling.
I'm supposed to too, but I can always find a set.
Well, I,
Yeah, right. Nobody wants to miss it. I'm missing it. I have a ticket to give to Carol Dickinson.
Margaret, are you going?
well, I would like to go, but you need a quorum here, you know.
We need a quorum. I'm just looking at what we need to do. We're
Yeah,
taking too much. on
Could
this.
we move it earlier? Dan, could we make
But he
it
said
say
that's the big-
5 o'clock?
Oh,
Ooh.
Can you make
oh,
it
how
5?
innovative.
I think.
How innovative.
That's
Could we
true.
do that?
Yeah.
All right, why don't we do that? Can we make it 5?
This,
What
okay,
time?
it starts
Same
at
day.
6.
Tell starts at 6.
I'm tabling before, so you have to assume there's an hour
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Want to make it at 4?
Fine with me.
Sorry.
I don't think Katie can make
Where,
it. for
where is
Yeah,
the
you
meeting?
can.
Yes, where is the?
Del
Del Valle.
Because they have an auditorium. there. It's actually for Mars Arboretum, but they don't have an auditorium.
I hesitate to cancel the early April meeting because we have the Rain Barrel workshop, although they're not things that we necessarily need to talk about at a meeting. Let me think on this, we'll come back to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay. So the Rain Barrel workshop, Carol and I, and maybe some other people, we could use a few bodies, I think, are going to drive up to Allentown. We're going to rent a U-Haul and we're going to drive rain barrels back here. We're going to put them out by the outside of the fence of the police area. We're going to clean them out with a power washer that Margaret's going to bring over. And we're going to drill them. And then the first 14 people who sign up will come on May 3rd and put their own fittings in and get the full rundown on how these work. We're going to have diverters that you can cut into your downspout rather than have to cut your downspout. $60, it's a steal. They're generally very popular whenever townships do this.
And that's May.
May 3rd, it's a Saturday afternoon, 1 to 3. So that's how that's working.
And thank you for agreeing to move it out. So
Oh. I think
Oh.
it's
because we're
coming.
with the new carpet and everything. Yeah.
We have to drill. That's messy.
Oh, well, we're drilling ahead of time.
Yeah, but still
It's still, yeah.
outside.
Muddy shoes.
Are these donated from someone? Is that-
Oh, yes, Coca-Cola
Oh,
And we had,
in, up in Allentown.
Does the EAC make money on the rain barrels?
We probably will make a
We'll
profit on this. So then we may have some, because if they're $60 each, the the kits are not free, but they're not $60. Of course, the U-Haul's not free.
Yeah.
So, but we still, if we get all 14 people, we should still make profit. Yeah, it will be nice.
I
We're
think-
always looking
I
for.
think
new
they're
ups.
free, so if the U-Haul is big enough, we could put whatever in. We could store the extras at my house
We could.
for a little bit, yeah.
A
I don't
little
wanna
bit
live
like
with
to the
barrels.
next year.
yeah, how much extra room you got?
Something my
girl?
brother would
We'll
put.
talk about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it's kind of nice because if people
Mhm.
are late and decide they want one,
Mhm. Second
or
chance.
we could raffle them. We could take one to the shrine for our giveaway
Okay,
for the veterans.
okay. We could get extra barrels. I know that they'll give us as many as we want. So it's Coca-Cola. The good thing about that is they're happy to give them to any group like ours for free. They will help us load them onto the truck. And they're food grade. Rain barrels must be food grade. So they can't have contained anything that could have anything noxious in it. Because you're gonna put it on your plants, you must not drink it. All right, any questions there? Okay, quick request, I was gonna request if we could put the rain barrels on the web. And Margaret, you wanted to ask about the bird
Yeah,
migration?
so the bird migration will be April 1st to May 31st, so the same announcement that we had in
You
the
did
fall,
last time?
just voluntary.
I guess we have that, right?
I hope so.
Well,
Whoever administers the,
Well, that was Alex.
I'll go back
Yeah.
and see if I can. find
That's not a
it.
problem.
Okay, great. Okay. And one more quick thing before we move on to the ordinances. A logo. We had worked for quite a while on a logo. And Kirsten Lukacs, Peace Valley Nature Center, had designed us one. This is one we talked about. Remember? It's great.
Nice.
I like that.
Like?
It's good.
Okay. And she put New Britain Township in here. If we want to have Environmental Advisory Council in here somewhere, she would do that because my husband said, nobody's gonna know what EAC is. So would we need to get the board's permission before having something made up?
No, especially if you get a profit from the rain barrels.
So we don't have to keep asking you for money.
Spoke like a
Which we
dramatic.
hardly have gotten anything.
I think $1.
Huh?
No, I don't think you need the board's permission.
Okay, good. Next.
Next.
Only if you want money.
No, wait a minute. If we make a profit on the rain barrels, do we need to give it to you or can the EAC hold it for EAC things?
Uh-oh.
There you go.
Okay,
You gotta turn it over.
Gotta turn it over.
We'll keep it, we
Well,
can
are
keep
we
it
gonna
in
put
the.
out-
We'll put it in a separate account.
Okay. Oh, I
That's
know
great.
that it has to go in.
It's called lunch money.
But
No,
I wanted to make sure it came back out to us.
As long as you let us
no,
know.
Is that good for the Christmas party?
Okay. No, I know that the checks need to be made to you. So we've got our eyes on plants and caging and all kinds of stuff. Okay. Are we ready for ordinances? Okay. First thing is, it would seem like a good idea to have a blanket vote to pass all the no breakers that are marked with a thumbs up on the ordinances. Everybody agreed, it's pretty obvious. Does someone want a motion
Are
to?
we talking salvo or zoning
Oh,
first?
so I think maybe we could have that vote for both.
For
at
both, okay.
once.
Right.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we
I will
pass
second.
all the ones that.
Have the thumbs up. Nobody disagreed with any of the thumbs up. Okay, second?
not gonna belabor the point, but yeah, I'm not gonna. So I mean, but you guys do what you do.
You didn't agree with some of the thumbs up ones? So it's pretty
I- but I'm just like I said, you guys do.
Kathleen, may I address? So we already had planning commission. What they did was, and I appreciate you guys having yours in writing so I could already review it. So for an hour and a half, they all asked questions and made comments. They didn't all agree, but I marked them down and the board will get those. And so everybody had an opportunity. It wasn't a unified, they did a blanket, please approve with the comments you received tonight. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I didn't even know that was how it was going to go.
There were only certain comments that
So-
seemed pretty simple,
Mhm.
that everybody who put comments in said, agreed. And that's what we're talking about.
So in past, I've been doing this for 30 years. It doesn't have to be a unified, I mean, everybody's comments are welcome. The board will take all of them under advisement. So the planning commission didn't do it that way. I didn't even think about how you just addressed it. That's nice to do it, but you know, during this public meeting, anybody can have a comment, even residents, you know, people can, and it's recorded, we'll mark it down. We're going to do a list. So you can do it anyway. I'm just saying that was done differently in planning commission.
Yeah, the easiest way to do it is, we've seen all your comments.
I know.
And some are good and some we have some questions about. But they'll all go to the board. And the board will make a decision. If there's no, if the comments that will be addressed, everything else, if there's no comment on, will just be deemed okay.
Yeah. In fact, let me jump in. You have plenty of time. We haven't even got a review back from Bucks County Planning Commission yet. I
We
haven't
want to
received all
get
the-
this done.
That is fine. I'm saying I have some supervisors already made comments, called me, talked to me. I document those as well. In fact, some of the changes recently were just discussed, you know, informally and formally. If someone thinks of something tomorrow, next week, you know, we have a limited time, but we're not going to be, because we have to have a hearing, and that's when the official one will go out for advertisement. The solicitor's not ready yet. He probably won't be for another month because we have to digest everything from Bucks County
We
Planning
need to
Commission.
hear from the planning.
Yeah,
commission.
so I would say in the next 3 to 4 weeks, anybody has like, hey, I just thought of this, check. Because I'm doing that myself. There's misspelled words, there's other things that we just copied from the prior ordinance that we weren't involved in, but we showed it as a change. And you guys caught some of them really, we never changed that. It was wrong in the original ordinance. And that happens too when you cut and paste from different ordinances. So I'm just saying, even if you think of something else, I have no problem with, you can send it to Dan and he'll filter it to the solicitor and myself and we'll look at them.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll review all the comments. And whether they make it in or not is up to the board. Any of the
Okay.
recommendations is up to the board.
Okay.
So they'll get a
I-
list of all,
Okay,
everything else is, if there's no comment on it, that probably won't change.
sure. That was what we were thinking.
Yeah.
There's some in here right now that I don't agree with that we put in there because it was direction of the solicitor or the prior zoning officer. So, you know, it's a collaborative and the board will decide what makes it.
So then, the way we're going to approach this is, what does the EAC advise? So you're saying you don't want to know what the EAC
No, I'm
advises?
not saying that. Everybody has, everybody's made comments on the different ones that they have comments on. And we'll take all of those comments and the board will see
Okay.
all of them.
So that's
May I
the
make a
individuals.
suggestion?
Yeah.
Why don't we go through the comments
Let's do that.
on ones that you have problems with or found issues with? And just, we can discuss them and,
Mhm. Well, that's what we were going to do.
okay, we'll just
I
start
was
that way.
trying to,
Just-
I was just taking a vote on skipping over the ones that we agreed on. So,
Okay.
for example, the first one, I didn't want to have to read all this. There, the open fee in lieu for open space in the very first paragraph.
Okay, that's the resolution. That's not actually.
Yeah, that's not even the ordinance. And that's a mistake by the solicitor because we made a change. Everything's been removed, fee in lieu of. That's actually not the ordinance. That's the resolution the board must adopt. And I'm glad you caught it because I didn't even look at that part. I go right to the ordinance.
And
So,
we just wanted to point
Yep,
that out.
yep,
That's all we're
yep.
doing. is pointing it out.
Okay.
yeah, no, but I honestly agree with Mary Beth. Just go through your comments and then at the end you can craft the motion however you want. Maybe at the end you all agree. I don't, anybody can ask me a question. I'm here tonight. If it's not even marked up and someone else has a question, now they're reading it, go ahead and fire away. And if I can answer, I will. Plus, you all have the right to come to the hearing and to the board meetings as residents to talk about anything, but I'd rather focus on the EAC comments. And as you mentioned, some of the comments, I'll even answer some of the other ones, but try to stick to the environmental part of it.
We all went down that rabbit hole.
I saw, and I'm okay with it. I read your
And
comments.
we realized, we're going to be talking about, you know, like how big your parking space is.
That's okay. It's still an issue. So
Yeah,
for somebody.
okay. So the next one that would make sense to say is,
Zoning or Saldo?
Saldo,
Yeah, I think zoning is probably where you stray out of your realm.
because it's all parking.
Kathleen, can I just interrupt 1 second, just for the benefit of everybody else? And I know you know this because you sat for the board meetings. I did 5 presentations to the board, starting back in December of 2023. And actually, I'm sure it was either someone on the AC, we don't know if we had an AC back then, or someone on the board that was whispered in Cynthia's ear about some tree protection and landscaping and the native species. And that's what actually spearheaded all of this. Said, well, I've been trying to get other changes. So we started back in December of 2023. We looked at natural resources, landscape, and buffers. Then I did a presentation about parking and traffic. Then Dave Conroy, the zoning officer at the time, he did zoning along with, and I looked at some of it with the solicitor, but most of that was his. Then we had a list from prior zoning officers going back at least 2 prior zoning officers that had, they mark up, hey, this is a conflict, this is an issue. So that's where sometimes I got stuck in planning commission. I couldn't answer why RVs are not allowed to be parked here or there. Actually, the RV comment that you guys raised, we weren't involved. It turns out Dave Conroy and his solicitor were working on that.
Mhm.
So we're trying to itemize all that because it's still a legit question, good question that to bring up. So then I did the, Janine, my associate, I did the subdivision land development technical update. And then the last update I gave to the board came from the EAC and the PEC recommendations, which was the big one. That was a big lift. And we agreed with 90% of that. So we added all that. I think there was some confusions because we didn't disagree. So we met at staff level, agree with most of them. Dan and I and the solicitor just spoke and we went ahead and made those changes. I felt the board would support you in those. So that actually went pretty easy. So those are the presentations. They were all informal. And this is also, again, a prerequisite to the hearing that we're going to have. And the municipality's planning code requires the board to have a hearing, and it'll be advertised twice. Everybody can come, public, EAC, everybody can come and represent themselves at that point, and as residents, and comment on the ordinances on that advertised ordinance. At the close of the hearing, if there's nothing substantial change and the board is okay with any minor comments we have, then they can adopt it at that time. We have to do both at the same time because we removed certain requirements from zoning and put them in subdivision land development. Some big thing was traffic. I'd rather have control of traffic improvements, any relief given, be at the board level and not going to the zoning hearing board. So that was another big change. Nothing really changed in the requirements. We updated parking. But that was it. So we have to adopt them both in that hearing at the same time. If one hits a snag, we have to stop both of them and then re-advertise. Okay, so what you have actually, there's been some minor changes done already because we're getting comments from Planning Commission. So a couple comments you made are brought up, we've actually already addressed. So,
Okay, good.
so with that, then you can go through each one and I'll try to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Okay. Margaret says, can we add a rain garden list of native plants? And that is on page. So probably then from what you're saying is we'll just leave that right there. And I said we can advise it. So is that enough then? We don't need to do any more?
Are you,
So-
where,
Are you in zoning?
are you in zoning?
We saw that.
Well, okay.
It's actually in the definitions.
Okay, yes. What page is it, Margaret?
I'm voting in your comment.
Oh, it's on page 2. Rain garden. And so you gave a lot of, you named the appropriate native plants so actually would the problem be that, would this be a place to add a list of appropriate native plants for rain garden.
Yeah, I don't think the list needs to be there.
No,
in
correct.
some way.
I'm
That's
just
what-
saying, there's an appendix where you have other native.
Is that something the EAC could, get you-
Sure.
and then we can, I can have the landscape. And I failed to mention
And they
that,
can pick and choose.
yeah, because we have landscape architects on staff, we'll have them review it, but if you have something,
The
I have no
issue-
problem with that. And the more you provide in the ordinance, it's better for the design engineer. They'll just
the
copy
issue
it.
is that you added a definition. And it says specially selected native vegetation, and then somebody says, oh, that's a great idea, I'll put one of those in. I'm gonna call the township and see what they recommend.
It's funny. I posed that question to Janine several times. We met to go over things, and every time she came back, my questions were, well, that came from the PEC. I'm not sure what they meant, but we liked it, so we put it in there. Just like your green parking lot standards.
Yeah.
So it turns out that a lot of those were driven from the PEC recommendations.
So we need to move on.
Yeah.
We will add that.
Yeah, so provide a list and we can add that.
Okay.
Should we go back up to the word in the definition of invasive plants? Where is that? You got that one? Up above, rain gardens is I for invasive plants. Just if that should be an and or.
Oh, yes, I thought that would be, okay, shall we go back to that?
The definition of invasive plants says those species, so this is beginning is definition. So invasive plants are those species that are not native to the state, grow aggressively and spread and displace native vegetation. And I thought it should be and or spread because not all of them.
You already saw that, probably already changed.
No, I didn't change that, but we have a couple places we did and or now. Same thing with trees that are dead, disease and dying. It should be and or if it's a safety issue. We've had a couple of those where they're hanging over a tree, maybe not be dead, but it's a complete safety issue and it gives authority for us to remove that.
Okay.
So yeah,
Not all non-natives are aggressive. Okay. and or.
yep, that's fine.
There's a question regarding tree protection zone, and it was, is that for people who already have houses there? And it's only for new development.
You answered that.
Yes.
That is only actually for construction. Tree protection zone is
Right.
only
Yeah,
for,
we know.
You got
it? So. I
Somebody
was
did.
going to delete that, okay? Shall I just?
All I'm saying is if
No,
you
no, we
could,
don't
you
need
could
to.
clarify.
I know.
Because construction can
This
be,
is Saldo, it's for development.
All right, so I
That's
think,
what
I
the-
think, I think the question to come up several times, several people. This is an ordinance, it's a law. It has to be a hearing, it has to be advertised, it's enacted, and the date it's enacted, it's usually 30 days from that date is its effective date. There's no retroactivity. None, unless it states in there that it's retroactive, there's never retroactivity.
Right.
It
and
takes
that
effect
comes
on
up
the day it's
later as
effective.
well.
actually in zoning, you can't even do that. So
Yeah.
it starts from the date, 5
Date
days
of
after
adoption.
the day of adoption.
Well, 5 days or 30. It all
Okay,
depends
with
what
you
you pay
guys, if
for
I
it.
just delete that since it's settled, or shall I leave it?
Is it settled law?
It's settled that this.
Well, I have it. I'm going to tell you, I think everybody should make their comment, like, because it's an educational component and
Okay,
that is for construction only. That's the definition. So yes, it does have a dimension there, but that's only during construction. As soon as construction is done, that tree protection fence is removed. It's called a zone because that's how they do it, but it's removed and it's gone. So it's only
So
for
we'll
new
just
development
leave
under
everything in
construction.
here. So you see, how
Just
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. In that case, there's really not much for us to do here, except tell you what we wrote. So
Correct.
there is notification requirements. And this is the one we feel pretty strongly about. The applicant for a subdivision or land development shall, with the submission of a sketch plan of submitted and preliminary plan, notify all surrounding property owners, et cetera, within, and it said 1,000 feet, and it got changed to 500 feet. And I think all of us are in favor of it, letting as many people adjacent to something that's going to happen know about it. So we think it should stay at 1,000 instead of 500.
All right. So I'll comment on that. Planning Commission raised that issue as well. In fact, they're the ones that wanted sketch plans, submit people to be notified at a sketch plan level. And I really encourage that because I like people to come out early in the process, not at preliminary approval. We recommended 1,000, so that's in blue. So that's wasn't your current. Your current is actually 500. Met with the solicitor, had to change it back to 500 because that matches the zoning hearing board's requirement, and we can't have these people notified for zoning at 500, and then these people notified at 1,000.
Can't change the zoning hearing board requirement?
You can. That's a separate process, and until that's done, don't change it here. That was his legal recommendation. But I agree that it should be. And Planning Commission brought this up. We'd love to have it 1,000, but that's something that you'll need to address once the zoning hearing board requirements are changed. Then we can change that, but it needs to match for now.
So I'm adding work on changing zoning hearing board requirement.
I don't even know what the process is.
Is that?
I don't.
I thought that was statutory.
Statutory. It may
I
be.
think that's part of the MPC.
Yeah.
I don't think
we
that can be changed.
that because that's a
Municipal plan.
statutory
State.
requirement.
We'll look because Planning Commission brought the same thing up. I'll
We
confirm that
can
with
look into
solicitor.
that,
Yeah.
whether we on our own can expand it.
Yeah.
But legally, the requirement is only 500 feet.
Okay.
But everybody's in agreement with at different committee levels. So
All right, so the next one is on the sketch plan procedures, the Township Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors make suggestions and recommendations, at which time the plan is discussed. And it shall be summarized in minutes for the Board of Supervisors. Is this the right one?
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah, and we say, can the EAC have input?
That's difficult. Because the MPC, again, the municipality's planning code lays out the procedure for plan submittal and review. And there's no requirement, or there's no section in there for EAC review.
any committee review, actually.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter which committee. Other townships have many more committees to go through. So it could be planning commission had some issues too with some of this. They actually didn't like board of supervisors being added. They wanted to see
Like what?
board of supervisors being added. They wanted everything to go to them only first. So we got a lot of argument who wants to see it, but I agree. Dan and I just spoke. I talked to the solicitor as well. It's more of a policy decision if you guys would like to do it that way. And that's why I recommended planning commission that comment can stay. The board will see that. And most likely what we'll recommend is planning commission had some concerns on process of reviews. You have that. It'll be a policy decision.
Right.
Like
I don't think it's something we can codify.
Yeah. This would be in an ordinance and it doesn't match.
And the reason I put some caution on that, the codifying it, is if, say, a developer comes in, submits plans, loses, and decides to go to court, and his reasoning is because the EAC had these recommendations that they couldn't match. Well, the EAC really has no authority to do that. So if it's codified, it kind of puts us in a little bit of a jam. But if it's a policy that we look at, and again, your recommendations, same as the planning commissions, the board of supervisors can say, yeah or no. Yeah, but we just don't want to codify it to give some developer down the line a chance to use that as a lever to pull. That's all.
So you're saying that still the EAC may have the ability to.
If the board decides to bring you involved to the project.
Some woman from Doylestown Township told me that EAC told me that they are reviewing that the township gives them plans, the EAC plans to review.
It could be a policy, but not necessarily codified. Yeah.
Okay.
Just advisory.
Yeah.
Let me jump. Yeah, I agree with everything Dan said. We've had this discussion before. And I think either Margaret or Kathleen mentioned in the board meeting, there was a car wash coming in or potentially coming in at the old Wawa site. So they went to the zoning hearing board. The only reason they came to the meeting was because the application was being considered by the board, whether to oppose it or not, or oppose it with conditions or to send a solicitor. That was a sketch plan. I think maybe you and I discussed it, and Cynthia as well.
Right.
That wasn't a land development plan yet. In fact, not everybody even gets to see that yet. The board sees it to whether or not they want to actually oppose it. You don't have the ability to do that, neither does planning commission. Once they submit a sketch plan or the first land development plan, I know it's directed to go to the EAC Planning Commission, and then obviously our office and the solicitor. So you'll be getting every plan, but when you see sometimes plans at the board level, it said zoning still. And I think there is some confusion because they try to come here and show as much as they can. So that last project was only zoning. So land development, all the plans and subdivision plans will be coming.
I guess some of the confusion is just the terminology, like sketch plan.
Yeah.
It's really a concept plan.
It's a
And
zoning hearing board exhibit plan. It's what it
yeah,
actually
it's a
is.
concept. This is an idea of what we want to do.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have any formal review process. And especially when it comes to zoning, it's like, okay, here's what we're looking at. These are the waivers we need, or this is what we're going in for variance variances. And it's just a concept plan that's getting looked at. So
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
So yes, you'll see everything.
Okay. Next, Margaret makes a general comment. Is there some way to consider protection of historical properties? Do we do this in MBTA? And I said, I don't think it would be in the ordinances, but we can ask. So there you have that. You didn't need to answer us right now.
Well, that's an easy one. You don't have, yes.
We have,
I handled New Hope for over 20 years. If you have any historic buildings, you would have, HARB and go through HARB and historic board, and there's a whole process, and it's very cumbersome. So I've been asked that before. I've never been aware of way to make what you do. Then you need to get that to Dan. You need to check the registry, and then you can go through that process with the solicitor. You can create, historic areas. There's a whole process, but you better make sure that everything's on the registry. So
There's a list of historic properties
That we got from PennDOT or recently from.
Recently.
there has to be a federal registry and all that. There's a whole thing to go through.
It's a trust.
But that's separate. It can't be addressed in here, but yes, that can be.
Right.
just a general.
Interesting. So I had two questions in here, maybe quickly, they could be answered. Is there a requirement that woodlands around the edge of a tract remain? That's actually something that you and I had talked about, Craig, especially on the street side.
A piece of property.
Yes, a property to be developed. Is there a requirement? Because
So in other townships, we call that a buffer development. We allow higher density. We allow it smaller lots, higher density as a trade-off to preserving the buffer.
so it's not required.
It's an option.
Can
No.
we make it a requirement?
We might not want to make it a
No,
requirement.
not we.
That's a legal question. I'm going to tell you, I think that's very difficult to defend in court because your ordinances say you're allowed to disturb so many trees. And by law, you can't tell them which ones it's their property developed. You just can tell them how a percent, or they have to go to zoning hearing board or go to court. Like we've had a couple go to court. But what we've done in other larger municipalities, you have to give them a carrot to do that. Now, the other thing is now that we have an EAC, I have no problem with you guys being hey, this is what we recommend and put that in there. We never had that before. I don't think planning commission, my office doesn't look at stuff like that, and the planning commission hasn't. So you can always request or ask them to do it. But if you want to put something in writing, you have to create an option. We call it buffer developments, and then there's criteria that offset for preservation. They're allowed to do because you're taking some land away.
One more building.
What?
They can put more buildings in.
The problem I have
And
was
the density
you say all that, and then when the trees are cleared,
and that's what they want.
half of them fall, the rest fall down, the other ones are leaning. That's what we have happen. And next thing you know, your buffer that you preserved and gave the developer more density or gave them a trade-off.
It's going on. Because they run the equipment, yeah.
It's
And depending on.
you guys know more than I do, but when you do this clearing of these woodlands and then whatever's left is not used to, they're used to having protection. And then,
It intertwined.
and then everybody draws a line and it's just not easy to do. So I would say no, but I think it's definitely an encouragement thing that you can talk about.
Unless there's a champion tree there.
We have that's specimen trees. We added that.
I'm just generally curious, is there a list of recommended, I don't know, trees, for instance, to fill in these requirements with?
Yeah,
That's in the
It's in
ordinance.
here.
yeah. Never too
It is
to
in
come
here.
off, but other than that.
Yes. And there are lists for
Actually,
various situations.
Yeah.
Buffers, riparian buffers,
Street
street
trees,
trees. And they're all
It's a-
different.
The big trees, there's a short list. For the smaller trees, it's much heftier, but they're good. They're good trees.
Yeah, they're all good trees. A question,
You should see.
for the change from 2 to 5 years for the geologic survey, or from 5 years to 2. From 2 to 5 years. Why? Why not have a more recent?
Well, it's
geologic-
already been changed to 3 at staff level. We compromised. There was a lot of pushback. And I gotta admit, anybody that knows Janine, I was fighting with her. I'm like, look, let's not, because we get a lot of pushback on how long it takes to get through New Britain Township. Where other townships, it's fast tracked and the surveys get outdated. So we had a lot of complaints, and Janine takes a lot. Janine's my associate, who does the reviews. So she's the one that recommended that. Dave Conroy agreed. Because when they had to go back out, the cost to go back out is a lot to survey, because it's not just survey this area, it's a whole survey. You know, Mary Beth and Dan probably know more when I survey stuff for the parks. So you're talking 20, 30, 40, 50,000. Well, I would love that to go to adding, for you guys, adding more plants, for the planning commission, adding a different design. But so I was trying to compromise. I'm fine with 2 if that's, or what we have originally,
Isn't this
every 2 years.
survey done at the cost of the developer?
Everything in this whole ordinance, yeah, I saw that.
Right.
Right.
Everything it requested, everything that any of us
All
asked.
the
But
costs-
it takes so long to get through a process here.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to do it twice.
Okay,
It
we're
shouldn't
not
take
paying,
5
we
years,
don't
though.
pay for these, the developer fees. Okay.
I
Shouldn't
compromise.
take 5.
I proposed 3.
Just as and I know I shouldn't probably say this, but if you've got a developer coming in and you make them resurvey the property every year because the process is taking 3 years to go through,
Me.
I would see that as a possible position upon which to sue the township for unreasonable requirements, or we can't put onerous requirements. We can put reasonable requirements, but if we become onerous, that's a basis for a lawsuit. We don't want to cause that.
So to give you an example, if the developer comes in with a plan, it's frozen in time at that point. Everything, the clock starts right then. If we change something in an ordinance down the road, doesn't matter. He's dealing with that. So his geological survey at that point is the one that should.
I'll actually go further. Once this is advertised, and we have a hearing, there's a pending ordinance doctrine that freezes everything also. That actually, that some of these new requirements can go into effect, even though it wasn't adopted and approved. Now, they still have the right to do both. There's the existing ordinance, but there is some legal way. Once we advertise, we're notifying the public developers, these are new ordinances. And back in the day, people would rush in here to try to get stuff done if they know, what we're doing. That's the other reason I know these are all recorded, and sometimes I don't answer. I know, especially in the audience, when you're at the board meetings, I can't answer certain things because of what Mary Beth just said, because that'll be put in against me in court when we're getting sued of, this is what you stated to a resident in the meeting. So I agree with Mary Beth. We have to be careful on how far we go. Every time there's a disagreement, I ask the solicitor in all my accounts, and Scott and I work in several, can this stand and be withheld up at court level? And that's really how Scott and I look at it. So there gets to a point where we both say, no, we can't defend this in court, that there's no reason to have, every year or two, they survey the entire property.
But at least you changed it. Right.
Yeah, I try to compromise everybody as 1-3.
All right. I had a question about the wetlands. I think that rather than a soil specialist, it should be a wetland delineator. That's an important professional.
I looked that up. And do you know where that's defined? Because I don't have a problem. I found mostly professional wetland scientists as a definition.
I will send it to you. And
Okay.
I will send you the information on it.
We just can't, I have no problem. I think that's even better. I'd rather have professional wetlands be part of that. I saw a lot of people that testified in court. I went through some others, and their resume said professional wetlands scientist.
Instant hydrology is one that just did it. Yeah, so they're specific. I don't know what
It
their
is very
title is.
specific.
That's just,
Yeah.
I don't think I went through DP a little bit. I didn't see anything that
I'll
says
send you this.
that's fine.
Okay.
I have no problem with that.
Okay. Okay, and now we're down to the wetland buffers. And there's a number 6 says invasive species shall be removed whenever practicable. And the suggestion is that get them out.
remove them first.
Which page
And
you on?
then
This is
It's fine.
page 14.
riparian buffers, okay, zone 1, and then it's number 6. And then it's the end of the paragraph, and it just goes through planting trees, planting shrubs.
Yeah,
And then
I did-
remove
yeah.
invasives where practical. It's like, well, no, you start with the invasives.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you plant the trees and the
Yeah, I
shrubs.
know.
So,
I agree with you. Yep.
yeah, okay. It just, and it's in
Good
two
suggestion,
different
thank you.
places.
So just take the wherever
Yeah.
practicable out.
Yeah.
Do we have any concept of when we're counting trees, for instance? Are we tallying up a whole bunch of invasive trees that are going against whatever,
It's a good question.
requirements?
Can you say it again?
I realize there's some subtlety, but let's say we have a list of native trees that we're trying to encourage, right? And we have a requirement of X number of trees per acre
Mhm.
or per square footage of development. If the trees that they have there are all essentially unwanted species or invasive.
Just say
then I
something
think-
like Bradford pears. So
Right, yeah.
they're existing and
So-
they were supposed to be sterile. And now we have fields filled with them.
So the question is,
Because
when a developer is taking down trees,
Yeah, I think my biggest gripe is that, a tree is not just a
Yeah.
tree and like,
Mhm.
turf surface versus, native perennial surface, they have way different impacts in how much water they can absorb and things like that. So I think there's a bit of a quality gradient that's there, so. I
it's a
feel like
tough one.
It is,
Yeah.
but
Not every township has these requirements. Your riparian buffer requirements are tough.
Yeah.
People don't, I've always told the board, you guys have tough words to begin with. And this is where it's not, I understand both sides. I'm trying to think of, it says, so if we make it, they have to remove them. There may be a situation where, because riparian means it's along the creek, so it's in the, and what if we have a whole area, like what's it gonna look like? Like you basically are saying, you're gonna make them remove all the invasive species and do replantings.
And what
That's
you
what we're
wind up
saying.
doing is there are people that specialize in that and you have
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the burlap goes in,
Yeah.
the pins go in, the planting goes in right away. It has to be done. It has to be quick. So you take it out, you have to replace it very.
Now, I agree with everything, but I'll play devil because this is what happens at
Yeah,
board.
yeah.
You don't get the residents as much here. So the resident lives across the other side of the creek. That's used to be shielded from all these new magnificent, okay, with all the
Lovely house.
uplighting and all the great things that these new houses come with, right, or townhouses. Even though they're invasive, there's a nice buffer and there's a creek and they've lived there, especially around here, 34 years. They're gonna be the first ones complaining to her and their other board members that I've lost my protection and my viewscape with the creek. And yes, they're invasive, but it's a buffer. So I have a feeling that's probably why I didn't write practical. I don't even know where that came from, but
Practicable.
practical.
Which I thought
Well,
is-
that's even real. I would
Yeah,
say
I
as,
know,
I would louder say as required by the township. You're right. It doesn't say practice.
The practicable
We
thing.
lost.
Yeah.
It may have all been invasive, but now our backyard is.
Did they
rural to the
replant?
trails.
Did they replant with
They
something?
replant, I plant stuff.
And that's where they put all the lap stakes.
I'm fine
so
with
we're
it. It's just, that's on the board's gonna have to weigh on how far, like, because we can make anybody remove all the invasive species from every property. You're gonna have, like, we have a minor subdivision coming in, 2 homes on,
I don't think
40,
that's realistic.
but I see then we have to say that of when it
The problem
applies.
is that no two properties are alike.
Right.
And
There's no
everything
one size
has to
fits all.
be- You have to be flexible because we don't want to remove all of those trees, even if they're invasive, if they're going to allow erosion of the riverbank, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have to be,
What if we
So
say,
that's where the
so what
wetlands
if we take,
concept
I don't like that word. What if we said something like invasive species shall be identified and removed upon approval by the board of supervisors? Now, that would be the recommendation of the EAC.
All right.
That sounds good?
Yeah.
Because we could have-
Normally we'd say township engineer, but this is different. This item's different, so I'd rather put that on the board based on your recommendation. Yeah, does that sound good? I'll write it down. Dan's recording it.
Just sharing ideas here, but I'm wondering about something like a scoring platform where you know, for instance, a native large tree is worth 10 points, you know, a native smaller tree is worth 5 points, you know, a native shrub is worth 3 points, or a native perennials, you know, it'd be worth whatever, and then, you know, X number of invasive plants, or you get docked however many points. I think sometimes we're trying to be too strict about what goes in. I see new stuff that, you know, you got 20 big trees that are all planted next to each other, and the long-term trajectory of those is not, you know, probably not going to be good, really. You're going to wind up with 3 of those that are
I
left, so.
understand, but again, I'm gonna state that no, you can't just apply one flat rule to every property.
Well, it would be,
You're gonna have
it
to
would
be
be a
flexible.
dynamic rule. That's the beauty of the idea. It would be 100%.
Well, I have a feeling that somewhere deep in the landscape architect or whatever, in the engineering firm, there's probably some sort of
I would think there's a scale.
scale like that. So if we go into a property and there's 14 Bradford pears, they're not gonna count for much. If there's 3 small
I'd be
birds,
really
they're gonna-
encouraged to see that, but.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
doubt
sure
it.
that's the case.
Yeah,
Maybe we can.
But
look
I
into
think
it.
that's where you play a role.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
This
So
is
he's
that-
turning it back on us.
Well, I think that's
Which
why
is
you're here.
perfect.
That's a huge part of that.
So I suggest that, Chester, we work on something like that and we make a proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sharing it as an idea, but
Yeah.
I think that happens at the public meeting where they're reviewing that plan and they go out and look at it, and you're the experts in that. We look at, but we don't look at that level.
Right.
Because that's a lot of bill, that's a lot of expense. Now they have to pay for whatever we ask for, so they identify everything, but I think that's something that you guys should charge yourselves with looking at.
So we could work on that.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's what happens now.
no.
It isn't. Okay, moving on. I'm suggesting that when it comes to the areas where there are activities not involving impervious surfaces, such as playing fields or golf courses, that they need a nutrient management plan, just like in A2 above, which was customary agricultural practices.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. So it's in there.
Okay, the compact and soil.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what you want to do about the compacted soil, but it's something to consider.
Are you talking about the golf course comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a golfer, Dan's a golfer. I actually didn't even know that was in there. I have no problem taking golf course out of the recreational activities. I mean, it's not gonna come, I mean, the townships are, it's, yeah, I don't see that happening. So if you would like to take that out, but I do
You
agree
do
with you.
know the lake was going to be surrounded by golf courses.
I do know that because I thought it was on the board.
So
The original plan,
I agree to take out golf course there.
Bill Mitchell's.
I did not know that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I found like, I don't know,
It's now a big matter.
a 1972 or 73 book or 50, whatever anniversary that was. It was there was a long article about the lake in there, and it was a golf course.
It was gonna be where the south parking lot is in the nature center, because the nature center's out on.
This
Keep
is
going.
a correction.
Keep going. Yeah, I gotta get home. I got an hour drive.
Okay.
Okay, green parking parking lot standards are required to be met for all parking lots or expansions of 10 spaces or more. I love this. Everybody loves this. I talked to Paul Brissett at PEC today too. He likes what you did with all the stormwater, bringing stormwater infrastructure very much.
But you see my comment.
But the comment
You need a
is,
definition.
we need a definition, or we need a reference for green stormwater. I mean, for green parking.
So since the PC, I printed all that out too.
We'll get it.
Yeah, well, there isn't any. Like, I have Montgomery counties. EPA has a 2-page stormwater best management practice green parking lot. It's a 2-page design. I don't know if anybody's seen it. We have to be specific on the requirements. So I'm open to whatever you can
Why
provide.
don't you just say best practice?
It's not. It's because like
Well, the Monco handbook is generally, I mean, I
That's
can
what he
find
has,
out.
isn't it?
So-
Are you looking at it? Okay, yeah. He's looking at it.
I have what you sent when we did our review. I agree with it. We need something,
Yeah.
but at the same time, if you recommended reference a document as their standards, whatever's in there, you can't say, oh, well, we don't like, you need to make sure whatever's in there you like, because the developer will go through and it's like, so we defer to DEP's DEP's BMP manual. If there's not something in our ordinance,
Do they have one on green parking?
no. And that's my fallback. When your ordinance is outdated, I use it all the time. They don't even, because I can't sit there and say, well, the state adopted these new requirements and like a lot of it's for infiltration, a new way to do the stormwater design. As long as it meets the BMP design manual, we're okay with it from a stormwater standpoint. And the county does that as well. They follow that at Bucks County. You just need to give me what you would like, and we just got to make sure.
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah. So,
There has to be something.
but I agree with you. You need something more.
You can't say be a green parking lot. and people-
Actually, that's came from PEC, your PEC review.
Oh, that's cool.
Tell them to give us something. We'll reference it.
Yeah, okay, good. And also out of that conversation, and not in these, is the curb cuts. Several of us noticed that it says curb cut, depressed curb and curb cuts are permitted where parking islands and strips are adjacent to a stormwater facility upon approval of the engineer.
Mhm.
That seems very, very much non-green parking lot. We don't see why the curb cuts wouldn't be permitted in any case. I talked to Paul and he agrees and says, really, it should be flipped. So that
What's that page you're on?
I am on page 22.
Okay.
So to flip the sentence so that curb cuts are permitted unless there is some sort of difficulty
Mhm.
with stormwater.
And I'll be a little sarcastic. I flipped it on purpose.
Why?
Actually, I did. My staff did. And I agreed. And I talked to solicitor about it. This is where if you write it the way that PC recommended, the way you're saying it, I can't stop. And concrete's expensive, right? So we do a curb cut. They don't have to do a curb reveal, right? It's almost flush, maybe a ½ inch to an inch.
Yes.
If you allow them to do it, even though there's no stormwater, I can't stop them if we write it your way, and they will not do curb around all the parking lots.
We're talking about a depressed curb at a certain, just in one spot.
You can't, again, every project's different. I can't tell them if the ordinance says it's permitted and they do the whole parking lot as depressed curb because it allows it.
That's not the idea. That's cheap. Okay.
I know I have you as a professor when you say it's cheap. So if they do stormwater, that's permitted. But if you write it that way, that's where someone's lacking, like your Paul guy, he hasn't been through the zoning part then enough to know. Here, a developer will just say, oh, I can do it and save all this money, like High Point, and not do full raised curb. and save, and that's not right either. That's
That's
beyond
not
cheating. That's
right
not
either.
right. It's not right.
Yeah,
But so that's why we had to change.
Okay,
Okay.
but that has to be worked on then, because they also would just take the lazy way out and just plunk that curb in there without working on the 3 foot long, depression to allow the rainwater to flow in and make a rain garden out of the island, which is the idea. It is. the
But
way-
that's where your design standards come in. That's why I didn't write anything, because when you start getting into that, you'll realize, like Mary Beth said, every project's different. And they can just ask for a waiver for all curves, which we get on really small projects. Now it'll come before you, but I'd rather have it, every curb's required everywhere. And then if they aren't doing enough, you can point to a design standard as the EAC and say, we would like this island to be storm. Maybe they just do one.
Depending on the grade.
On small projects, they're just not gonna, you'll see when you start seeing who comes in front of you. And they're like, oh my gosh, it's a surveyor who barely knows engineering, and he's allowed to per the state code to design this stuff. And you're like holding their hand.
Mhm.
But those are smaller jobs. Then you have the big jobs, big developers, where they're going to look for every little thing to get away from doing what's required. But that's why they'll come in front of you now. But we need to have design standards of, for curb cuts and for all the stormwater stuff we added. So you can handle it different ways as far as your design criteria.
Well, maybe there would be some way to tweak this to make it a little more likely that they would do the green thing.
Well, if you require the green thing, then they'll have to do the curb cuts because that's the only way to do it.
As
That's what I'm
long
saying.
as- Which would be fine, as long as they didn't just make curbs disappear.
Like
entirely.
if you came to the back of our building, we have all Gilmore's, we have the whole back lot is all the aisles and everything are paved, but porous pavement on all parking. And then we have the BMP in the middle. It's just massive. It's all curbed because that was designed years ago, but it would meet all the green standards, but it's actually curbed because the borough required Belgian block,
Okay. It's in New Britain Borough.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we have
Remember
all,
when you did that? That was a
Yeah.
long time.
it was, but we were trying to be innovative then. So, yeah, I don't have a problem handling that through the green parking lot design standards. If Paul gives you some of those, we can try to figure it out.
Yeah, okay. We are already, it's 8:07. You will not, nobody will, if you need to leave. Sarah, I'll be in touch.
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Thanks for coming in.
You know,
You're welcome to stay.
this is how- You don't like to see sausage being made, but this is how it is. If you don't,
This is
I
the sausage.
I slept with my wife at least 2 hours. So
And this is what, when developers come in, they can do anything they can get away with if the ordinance is left. So we really care about the ordinances.
Mhm.
Okay. There was a lot of discussion in our group about sidewalks and street trees. I think that the ordinance doesn't specify when you're talking about street trees, whether there are sidewalks or not. But if there are sidewalks, the suggestion is take care that the mature tree doesn't up into the sidewalks.
What
This
page are you
is
on?
page,
so I know I read it.
Around 33.
I think I saw that,
Right.
the way it was written, it's got to be at least 5
5
feet from
Yes.
the right of way.
outside.
The
Of
right of way doesn't mean the curb at the street.
Yes.
Right, no, the general sentiment just was, in general, don't buckle the sidewalks.
I need specifics. I read the comment. I agree with Mary Beth. So 5 feet outside the right means there's no trees. So the issue wouldn't come up. The sidewalk is in the right of way. Sidewalk will be 3 feet. So you have center of the road. Let's go 12 feet, whatever. Then you have the curb, and then you have a minimum 3 feet of grass. Then the sidewalk. Then usually you have another 4 or 5 feet of more grass that people think is their property that isn't, and then the property line, right away line. Then you have to go 5 feet and then plant a tree. That's what that says. We're nowhere near the sidewalk.
So it's 10 feet away.
Because-
Is that new?
No.
No, the right of way, a lot of people think their property is up to the
People,
curb.
yeah.
It's not. there's a marker. It's
Yeah,
at least
go find
3
your
feet
clean
in.
out, you clean out for sewer or your water valve, and that's usually where the right of way line is for the front yard on newer homes.
It's not yours, but it's yours. Yeah, really.
And
When
replace the
those
sidewalk.
developments where the trees, the older trees
Yeah.
are ripping up the sidewalks.
So, you actually, the New Britain Walk development over on the schoolhouse. The board back then wanted a neo-traditional style village design. And it was a night, and we have that in other townships. And it's a nightmare from the sidewalk tree conflict. I look at, everything looks, you guys know this, I look at something like that, it's not gonna look good in 10 years, but it looks nice now when you plant it. So what the section you just read is the trees are actually, Public Works hates it too. Township hates it for the clearing and the safety issues. So it's 5 feet outside on private property.
Well, I guess I'm talking about the developments like in my area that are probably built like in the early 90s, where
Yeah.
you can see people are leaving now. And when they're going, when they're moving, because the trees, the existing trees in the
Yeah.
front, you know, it's tree line street, all the sidewalks have been, you know, probably are.
So the trees are just too close to the sidewalk.
Well, so the roots of the tree are,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
creating tripping hazard. So when the homeowner moves, right, the sidewalk has to be placed. And so that's my point was like, if we know that's gonna happen 30 years from now, or, you know, 20 years from now, when the roots get big, why not push the trees back a little bit further?
So that's
Well,
what
that's
this,
what
that's
we'll
what
do.
this
Yeah,
will do.
That's what
I
we're-
have the same thing in my development,
So
but
So-
it's probably by the time they figure out the right of way, and then it all comes in when there's a new development being built. That comes in on the schematics,
Yeah,
and the
so
engineer looks at that.
It'll-
And
it'll be
unlike
good.
in the past where, yeah, trees were planted way too close to the sidewalk, that won't be happening anymore.
Yeah, so it'll be about 10 feet or even more.
So a minimum of 5 feet, but one of my suggestions also is that maybe we can add a list in the appendix of appropriate street trees, because even some trees that are planted 5 feet from the sidewalk, for example,
Oh, that's gonna be,
is gonna be huge in 30 years. If you're planting an oak tree, that sidewalk's coming up.
honestly, any tree, pretty much any tree after 30 years, I mean, I had it happen in my driveway and that tree came down eventually anyway, but it was ripping up out of the sidewalk, but,
Smaller trees won't do that.
We
So-
can prevent
so
the
you can
developers
modify
from doing-
the-
We can't prevent the homeowners from
Depends on the grade.
screwing themselves.
but if you want to look at the street tree list and anything you guys think that's could cause, you know, we can look at that. Look, they just copy the list. They don't, you know, the
Yeah,
design
there's
engineer.
several species.
So
in
if you
there.
guys see stuff, you're the experts, go ahead and, you know,
So we'll look at over the street tree list.
absolutely, anything in there, because honestly, I'd rather come from you and then I'll run it by our landscape architect just to, you know, say, hey, you see anything, but that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Tree list. The one thing I skipped over because we're running so late, but I will say very quickly, and I don't have time to go back and find it. It was way up around page 16 when we were talking about invasives. The list of trees to be planted in the buffer area, the
Mhm.
riparian.
Yeah, yep.
And it said canopy trees should include, and it listed a bunch of canopy trees. And then it said, understory trees shall consist of, and there was a quite finite list. And I think that the word consist means it would only be those, when you might want to switch it to include, and be able to have a full list.
All right, if you tell me where
Would the
the,
list be in the appendix? You
is
can
that in the
always-
appendix?
Yeah, you could
Okay.
give a list to
No,
put in the
it's
appendix.
right there. Okay, let me
Yeah,
go
the list
back
was in.
to page 16 at the top. So I'm sorry to bring you so far back. I was going to skip it in the interest of time, but
I don't see a comment. It wasn't something you guys made a comment on?
no,
Oh, okay, that's,
no.
What
I
section
asked
then
her
are
to
you?
look at it, and she didn't do it. At the bottom of 15. Oh, I'm only kidding. Hang on. Sorry. At the bottom of 15, overstory trees are deciduous or evergreen trees that include oak, hickory, maple, gum, sycamore, hemlock, pine, and fir. period. Evergreen and deciduous shrubs should consist of elderberry, viburnum, azalea, rhododendron, holly, laurel, and alders.
And I did look at that list and it's a good list.
You don't think there are any more that could be in there?
The alders, there's several varieties of alders that are still
So
a
you're
native
fine with
thing.
that as a
The
fine-
viburnum, it's as long as my arm.
No, no, I
And
know
then
that.
they're fine in that list too.
No, no,
So I
that's not the question. This would, this would restrict these to only this.
But I think that's a pretty
It's good
healthy
enough?
list, yes, because
Okay.
that's what's gonna be available for these builders to get.
Okay.
You know, they're not gonna be searching and sourcing trees. And you want it to be local. It is a fairly short list of native plants that are from this area. Yeah, so, yeah, it's okay to have a short list if it's a good list, and it leaves it open by variety. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's fine. There was the list of like sugar maple, blue spruce, and beech trees, and all of those trees are failing now in our climate. And it's ridiculous to even ask somebody to use that, and there's other trees that also get large that will do better. And they're actually, the horticultural people are working on lists because our climate is changing.
Yeah.
And so those lists are getting longer, but it's different varieties, and some of these things are coming from the south. So it's in flux. That's the thing that's in flux. Tree choices.
Right. Yeah.
For native.
Morris is working.
They're one
working
yeah,
on
they're
it.
one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
everybody's got their own
We
list.
skipped over one other comment, just, and I know this has come up so many times, the Circle Drive comment about the drainage, just, you know, because I've obviously been involved in that already. That doesn't apply there. That's actually going to a basin. So technically you can call that a drainage swale. I understand the issue there, but that's not what that's saying. Developers try to get away with, it's actually, I questioned Janine because I thought it should say surcharge, not discharge. That's from your old ordinance, actually. And some other comments you guys made, you don't realize we've taken it out of zoning, put it in Saldo. So I highlighted it, but it's been in there for a long time. Wasn't even our change. Anything that came out of zoning, I put Saldo is highlighted as blue as a change. It's, some of it is already existing, such as trafficking. So go ahead.
Yeah, not to get distracted from it, but the basin is clear on the other side of the property. It's not where it's discharging.
A drainage swale is anywhere. It's throughout all the properties, like every lot that's developed.
No, that swale was put in during the development.
Yes, I know.
Barbara,
Behind
I'm
you.
gonna bring us back to the ordinances. That's something for another discussion.
Yeah, but that's not where, that's a definition that wouldn't apply in that situation.
Okay. All right, now the next one. There's the point that the tree lists don't all match. And then I said, there's a differentiation.
I saw that. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to change them, you guys just give us a comments and it's not a problem.
So just in general, everything needs to be cross-checked because there's some on one list, but they're not on the other list.
But some are for specific purposes. There are things for
Yeah.
buffers.
No, I'm saying that there's.
Even if-
But that's not gonna
there's a
happen.
place-
Right? Unless you guys give a comment, that's not gonna, like, because there are different recommendations from different entities, not just you. And I'm not going through everything. We pull stuff over from zoning. If you guys have a current list or want to cross stuff off or add, just give me that and
All right,
we'll do
work
that.
on the list. All right.
Yeah, we need several lists. I have a list of lists to make.
Right, and for this next question that Margaret had, should these be added? You and I can talk
Mhm.
about this.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll go back and we'll talk about that. Page is that? 35.
Yeah, it's kind of covered 34, 35. I saw your invasive species about lilac.
Yes, that goes. That needs to go. Okay, we can leave eastern red cedar under evergreens and shrubs. Okay, with that.
I agree with your hardy zone.
Yeah.
Again, that was cut, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll update that.
Right. And it would probably be a good idea to or the current.
Yeah.
Kathy, sorry, did you have anything you wanted to say to us about anything?
I'll email you.
Okay, all right, because we'll work on 8A together, right?
Yes.
I need you. Okay.
So that's all your,
That's pretty much it.
Margaret gave, at the board meeting, gave me a couple comments on lighting. Turns out our detail that they didn't have, the board didn't have, actually was what you spec'd out, but it wasn't written in the text of the ordinance.
Right.
And the only difference was 3,000 K or whatever was the softness of,
Right.
it was type 2 instead of type 3 was the only difference, but there's a reason for that. So I had one lighting comment that was already changed, not in this one, but in the newer one that we have already.
Mhm.
So I got her comment.
Okay.
And then I apologize, the details, we've had an issue with the solicitor's office who prepares all this. The details, he has them embedded and all the lists and everything inside of Word and their PDFs. So I printed out, there's no misspelled words.
Oh, that's.
You're,
Oh, yeah.
but the lists get messed up, and Lily, it's very frustrating for us because we get it back from him and we have to just ignore it. And then I print out, which the board didn't even get. I wasn't gonna get into all the construction details, but I saw what you saw and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I printed out what we have, and Janine recommended to the solicitor a month ago that you can't embed all these lists and details in the Word document. So you're at the hearing, and when everybody gets the final copy, it'll be. So
Mhm, mhm.
I was like, what? So.
Okay, shall we quickly run through zoning?
Yes.
This is easy. These are easy.
It was in there, so.
I got it in.
Yeah.
We'll go into zoning. You are
I had
patient
one.
people.
Do you want me to run through your comments for you, and I'll quickly give you my?
Yeah.
All right, the zoning. Okay. So K3 was removed. I agree with, I think it was Kathleen, for wholesale business. We had an issue with the developer a couple of years ago. It doesn't really fit into a business campus. So that was a recommendation of staff and some board members to remove warehousing in a business campus. It doesn't belong, and I agree with Kathleen that wrote that. A lot of this has to do with, and I think we already went over it, is the zoning changes do not apply to an existing, to your property. If you're, and what that is, you're non-conforming at that. If it does create a setback issue or impervious cover, that's what the zoning hearing board is for. And your argument would be, hey, and the ordinance actually allows you to do certain changes anyway. So there's a couple of people that's what exactly. Actually, there's more than I thought here, Kathleen. I don't know. Did you have one you wanted to bring up?
I just had one, and it was about the natural area and maintaining them, be minimal, but get rid of the honeysuckle and the poison ivy. And poison ivy is actually a native that is important.
Oh, I saw that.
And
I saw
all
that.
I
Yep.
want to change it to
The-
poison hammerhawk.
Yep. I got
Because
that.
that's what we're finding, and I have to wear a respirator and gloves.
But you do it anyway, crazy.
Because I don't want somebody to get
Yep.
sick and die, because it affects your lungs. You can't breathe. People end up in the hospital. And it's new, so it's like this.
So let me, I got that change. Another comment was, who pays for things, everyone over all that with Dan, but if we needed a phase 2 or there's any other type of environmental concerns, that's a request I would put in my letter. You could also bring it up. So Planning Commission, EAC, Township Engineer, Solicitor, even Township Zoning Officer, we can all bring that stuff up. And the developer, if it's reasonable and the solicitor doesn't say, hey, can't do that, which we always ask them, let them argue back. I mean, that's how we do it here at this township, where we try to push until the solicitor writes a letter to Dan or the thing. But they have to pay for anything. So even when you ask for something, we just got to walk that fine line of what the ordinance says and doesn't say. One example, I talked to Kathleen before the meeting, the RV commercial trucks parking. I know this is EAC, but again, that's, if someone already has it, they're exempt from that. However, I think if if they add more, we have a lot of people that add more commercial vehicles or junk vehicles. If it's documented, oh wait, now there's 2 or 3, or there's only 1, that's a different story. And I wasn't involved in that, but the background story for RVs and commercial parking was the police chief had an issue with vehicles parked on streets. He wants them off the street. Well, then they go on the they have to go on private property. So that's a perfect example. The board has to decide. That's not even an engineering issue. Dave Conroy brought that up with the solicitor and the police chief. I have those emails. We weren't involved. I think it's a valid point of, where it can and can't go. And if you get them off the streets, they're going on the property, that impacts your neighbors. So that's an issue where it's not an EAC issue, but I don't know, probably anybody comment on it. You have it in here already, and that'll be something that the board has to decide on. So that's a safety versus aesthetics, or
Not my backyard.
They're not in the street in front of your house.
Yeah, well, either way.
Somebody wants to park 3 dump trucks.
Yeah.
If anybody else, I saw.
One about the definition of the residential structure.
Okay.
It's gazebos, but then in the definition, so gazebos is considered a structure. But then the definition says it's used for storage, which is, I don't think a gazebo, it's not.
Yeah, I saw that. I have a question mark there. I'll look into that. I'll talk to the zoning officer, which is actually Janine. I'll look and see where that came from. There's another one that was like that. This is where I realized that some of the stuff we highlight was just copy from zoning that we, Dave Conroy wanted to move out of zoning and move someplace and put it in zoning. And that was fences and walls. Someone brought up about, why does it say sign? It says structures such as fences, walls, or signs shall.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
Someone raised that, why the signs? Actually, that's a good point, because it should be taken out. That was in your old ordinance. It's under walls and fences only, so no sign regulations should be in there. So that should be removed. Janine thought it was in there from years past about billboards. And the good side of a billboard will obviously be facing out. But I went through it and I see no other reference of signs, so we'll take that out. So that was a good catch. No one else caught that.
We have a separate side on it anyway.
We do. Right,
So Kathleen had a comment, just curious about the fence not being permitted on, or it was just deleted about not being on a side lot line. And one thing I've noticed in one of the new developments up off the Township Line Road, those people are all putting up fences and they've got these little slivers of
yes.
grass in between
Yep.
them and their neighbors, which kind of makes it a nightmare.
It's not that when it says the fence, if it's gonna be 8 or 10 feet, can't be on the lot line, to enclose like a tennis court or a pickleball court or something like that.
You're just talking about private, just a regular.
Private
residence.
property,
Yeah.
if 2 neighbors want to split the cost of a fence, they can't put it on the lot line. Basically, it was regulations under fences, B was crossed out completely, and I'm
I
not
saw
really
that.
quite sure
What
why.
what page were you on?
That was on page.
At least on page, no, that's one. Yeah, they were added, sister, whatever, when he converted.
It's
Don't blame
page
me.
8, according to my Mac, it's page 8.
Yeah, residential fences and walls.
Section B1, B was, and then sub B was deleted entirely. So it kind of implies, I don't think it was meant to, but I think it kind of implies that you can't put it on a lot line.
No.
Doesn't make a whole lot of
No, it
sense.
doesn't.
I don't think we can take an implication. The ordinance has to be read as written. And just legally, it's just a good idea not to put it directly on what you believe to be the lot line. Because when I surveyed one side of my property to find out where the property line was, I found out that my neighbor who had the fence had it 3 feet on my property.
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking, I'm just.
No,
talking about-
so I agree with you. I asked Janine, because that came from Dave.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
So, and I said, there's gotta be some backstory to that, so.
Yeah, we don't want-
We'll look at, planning commission brought up the one right before that.
Who's gonna
About-
cut that?
Yeah.
Is it a little warmer?
100% opaque fence. What if it's 99% opaque? So planning, actually, I think, and Stephanie brought that up, supervisor. So there's
only
several
thing that-
comments and
The
fences
thing
that.
that matters with fences is make sure the good side's out.
Right, you have to.
The bad side facing your property, the good side's out. It's the golden. rule.
I have seen a lot of fences like that too, where
Can-
they each put up their own fence and there's like, you know.
Because they wanted a
branches
different
between
kind. Like,
fences.
some people might want to just have like the metal fence, and then somebody wants a wood.
It says May, the
box.
original ordinance says May. So it wasn't even a requirement when you write May. That means nothing in zoning when you say May legally.
No,
So I think maybe that's why we don't know the reason that the zoning officer didn't want it. The other thing is, like my fence for my pool, I'm 6 inches off my property line. My neighbor, and then in the back, everybody's offset a little bit, but two of our neighbors, we had to connect it to comply with Plumstead zoning. They had to get connected. So my neighbors goes across and connects to the existing fences at 6 inches, and then mine does too. And that's what the township wanted. So it's really, most don't do the gaps. They just usually work with the neighbor or,
yeah, disconnect.
yeah.
I think as deleting it, it probably, it's not a problem, but I just want to make sure.
No,
that
it's good.
The intent
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
No, it shouldn't be. That's-
Going down to section 27305 HH11. This is under recreational other vehicle
Mhm.
storage. Once this got talked about a little bit, we seem to be recommending clarity.
I'm
Yeah.
recommending a semicolon and rewording your sentence. So I think this is how you wanted it to read under definition. Recreational vehicles or units include, but are not limited to, the following: travel trailers, truck mounted campers, coaches, motorized homes, folding tent campers. Then skip to snowmobiles, mini bikes, all-terrain vehicles, go-karts, boats, boat trailers, utility trailers, and then put your semicolon and say, and automobiles, buses, or trucks that have been adapted for vacation use. The way
Is that
it's
what you
written
read?
right now can be
Hmm.
interpreted that you can't park an automobile.
I didn't write it. Dave wrote it. All the zoning stuff. from
Just
the
need a
zoning officer.
semicolon and reword the sentence.
So the recommendation is to work
Yeah.
on that one.
Yeah. We're gonna have your new zoning officer.
I know what the intent was.
Trying to get over one.
Sorry.
Okay. So there's a question about grandfathering recreational vehicles, but you already talked about that one.
Yeah, and actually, all your comments, I know we're skipping some, but even though they're not environmental, that's still good that you caught stuff, and planning commission did the same thing, so.
Okay. The page numbering, that's funny. You noted that the page numbering was getting goofy and now the pages numbers are gone.
Yeah.
We
and
had
some
page
things
numbers.
Jumping
They
around.
went away.
Planning commission, we had them. It's the formatting of the solicitor's office report.
Okay.
Jen and Heather was there.
So you can see the evergreen buffer, that's
Mhm.
obvious.
So one comment that is related to environmental. So under natural resources, I don't know, there's a big section in there that we added. And this is again to put more control in the board of supervisors' hands. So there's zoning variances aren't granted for woodlands disturbance, wetlands disturbance. So if you're now, when this is adopted, if you're doing subdivision land development application, even a minor subdivision, and you want relief or you want to exceed any natural resource protection standard that's current, you want to go beyond that, you need to request a waiver from the supervisors, which you'll see, planning commission will see, and the board, and not go to the zoning hearing board. If you're a single, if it's a single lot, whether it's existing dwelling unit, it can't be non-residential. No non-residential can add on. They have to go through land development. But any residential lot that's existing and wants to add a shed, wants to build a pool, wants to do a building addition, and they have a natural resource issue, and they're exceeding wilderness protection or they're in the wetlands and they want to disturb the wetlands, they have to go to the zoning hearing board. That's because that stays the same. So that's a big change. Other municipalities have that. And it's the same thing happening in other places. It puts a little bit more control in the board of supervisors ultimate to grant a waiver based on your recommendation and the planning commission. That's actually something I suggested, ran it by Scott, and we have some other clients that do it that way as well. So developers think it's great that they get to go to the board and ask for a bunch of waivers, and we'll just say, you know, most of them are no. But if there are some court cases where Scott and I have had to go and we settled out of court, but it's a specimen tree and it's a vacant lot or a tear down or redevelopment. If the specimen tree is in the middle of the lot and you're like, oh, you can't develop it, that's not going to fly in court. We've already been through that. So, but that's where the board has leeway to negotiate with the developer versus the zoning hearing board just granting a variance. So I've had that in one where there was out of 4 specimen trees, one just had to come down. The others were preserved. They wouldn't have normally been preserved. But the other one, there was negotiations and conditions put on by the planning commission, the board. So that actually gives you guys a little bit more input into and not just leave it up to the zoning hearing board. Okay. That was the biggest change as far as environmental, as far as the zoning ordinance. And then we took all the traffic out. I know you guys didn't probably look at that, but all the parking standards were updated per the current ITE manual. That was something the prior manager asked us to look into. We had already started working on that. Less parking is less impervious. You know, that's a good thing.
It is, yes, there's porous pavers and everything.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Did you notice though, Margaret put it in comment, we're already up to the 6th edition.
Yes, I saw that. Yes. Yeah.
And just also, and Katie had the same comment. I think I had commented this back in the spring. Why are we giving the same number of parking spots to a studio unit and a 4-bedroom unit? Why do each get 2? That doesn't make sense to me. A studio doesn't need more than 1. Typically, sometimes there's 2 people, but 2 doesn't seem to be enough for a 4-bedroom unit. Just a general, if that's the standard in the state, it's kind of.
I tell you, parking, you can do whatever, you guys can do whatever you want. I tell you, everybody has a different opinion because if you do it development right, then you have overflow for parking for parties and families and, you know, everybody, you know, I got 2 kids to drive and, you know, so you have 4 cars and 2 are always out in the, and that's something the prior staff board, we've always struggled over with parking of, so there's recommendations, but if someone has, I mean, we'll take it under advisement and then.
Probably more of a comment for you guys.
Yeah.
The board of supervisors, but you know, we both picked up on that.
Oh, it's a question of, it's like when you have a development off of Upper Church Road. And our solid says you have to have curbs and sidewalks, but it's pointless to make them put in curb and sidewalk for 200 feet of frontage when the rest of the road doesn't have anything.
Mhm.
So we don't want to mandate over parking spaces.
But then what happens is then people with the bigger units end up parking on the street and then the streets get crowded.
Are we talking about
See-
houses or are we talking about apartments here?
I think it's apartments, isn't it?
Apartments usually have enough parking anyway.
B6 is multifamily, yeah.
We can take a look at that. If you have a 4-bedroom, you're not usually looking at 4 adults, usually looking at
I don't know
families.
if I've ever seen a 4-bedroom apartment.
But that's what all those interesting standards are that Craig gets. to look
Well,
at.
here's, I don't know why that was changed originally. Yeah, I don't think you're going to, but sometimes it's not identified.
So usually if you use 2, it just averages out
Have to be a twin or
because
you're saying multifamily.
Multifamily B6 is apartment building.
Yeah.
There's B6 there's B7's mid-rise apartments, B6 is multifamily. That could be townhomes, and every township is different what they call multifamily. It's so confusing. I'd have to go back and look at the definition, but we can look at that collectively with the
Yeah,
staff.
we'll take a look at it.
Yeah. Sometimes they're not identified or listed. So you see a building with apartments. We have that when county builders went through, even with court.
Yeah, I don't think they build in studio apartments.
And they can change it. They can change it without us knowing because it's only building code. So they can take, so that's where maybe the zoning officer was thinking that you can't, sometimes they don't even identify what the units are yet. We can make them do that. So it looks like they were trying to simplify that. So I'll talk to staff about it.
We'll take a look.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're through. And we would just leave them as they are then.
Yeah, we have
You're happy?
have all
has
the
your comments.
And I'll send you these other things that we talked about. and we'll-
Yeah, you guys have a couple weeks. Anybody else? Just
Yeah,
send
look
them to
at
Dan
this.
and
Okay, all right then. Are there public comments? Don't ever do ordinances again, I'm exhausted.
now you know why we don't do them very often.
All right, we have one thing.
Someone asked me specifically to bring up tonight a question about this last event where salt was put on the road. I was not here in town, so, but there is a lot of salt and seems to be piles this last time, not like all the other
Yeah,
salt.
I took
things.
pictures. I was behind this. I was
Was there,
past your house.
Okay.
Which
I
road
drove
was-
behind it. I just kept taking pictures because
The
it was
person that
coming out.
asked me
filming.
lives in the Tower Hill neighborhood, but I have noticed it too, but someone asked me to bring it up, so I'm doing it.
Sometimes it happens. It's just the way, like, when the trucks stop and start.
Didn't mean to be.
Yeah. It wasn't intentional.
It's always
I
unintentional.
figured that, but someone asked me to bring it up, so I'm bringing it up.
Maybe it could be too that it hasn't rained. Like sometimes I think around here, like it snows and then rains.
Well, no, I've had several salt speed bumps deposited in my neighborhood too,
Yeah.
so.
This is very
So it'll happen when they hit like a bump or a
It
pothole.
was
So-
consistent on this one.
Really?
I
That's
don't
unusual.
know
And I
why.
sat through a
I
webinar
Actually,
on
one of my
how
neighbors
far
went
apart
out
those
and
particles. They're
shoveled
supposed
all
to be
the
3
extra
inches
salt
wide.
off the
Yeah.
roadway.
And the road was
Uh,
like, I kept saying to my husband, back up,
Maybe
back up, because we're picking it up under the car, like.
But sometimes the equipment
Yeah, it was
malfunctions.
any time. When you got to the stop sign, man, it, I did see people out.
Yes.
Shoveling,
Yeah,
shoveling,
yeah.
shoveling.
I'd like
Yeah.
to make a motion.
I don't know what happened.
We want what they say just to them. I didn't want to come on with too much too fast, but there is a great webinar on things that townships can do to reduce their salt application, some of which has addresses. No,
We get so many calls, we don't get enough salt, so.
no, but no, really, no, it wouldn't be that. It wouldn't
Right.
be that. It is more sophisticated.
We're gonna take a look at brining next year.
Machinery.
I like
stuff
that. Thank you.
Well, we're just gonna take a look.
Okay.
Um,
No, it's different
No,
equipment.
no, and I told the board this, is I live in a town that does brine. And basically what it does is it saves you 2 hours before your guys come out. And it's only good for 1 inch of snow. Anything more than that, you still have to come out and handle. So there'll be events where you don't have to respond because you only got a dusting and the brine handles it. We'll take a look at it, but then it also takes those pieces of equipment. You have to have 3 trucks that are solely dedicated to brining, and there won't be available for salting. So for a town our size, it's like,
Would you mind if I send you this webinar?
you can send it, yeah, but
Is it the one?
I think that our guys respond whenever the police call them out for icing, they'll
It's
go
not
out.
about not putting down as much salt.
Okay,
It's not.
you can send it. I'll let Brian look at it.
I'm just curious, have you guys ever, I've actually heard of molasses being used.
No,
No, I mean, I'm being totally
No,
serious.
don't get me wrong, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the.
I got to
cost of
imagine the
equipment That would be needed to both store.
And then how do you get the-
molasses And apply the molasses.
and then you're hitting all the critters on the roads, looking up the molasses.
Hundreds of thousands
Never
of
heard
dollars. Okay.
Who's gonna take care of the roadkill?
So it's like-
Let's wrap it up.
But I don't think we should be close-minded
We
to
need
those
to make-
concepts. I mean,
We need to decide about this
extreme
next
salt
week.
can really impact our water supply.
I
know you wanna go-
understand.
That could be really irreversible, so we.
Can I
This
go?
is entertaining. This is better than board meetings. 'cause it's boring there. This is great. Oh, I totally agree.
I'm not saying it is the solution, I'm just saying.
I don't have an attorney with me. I can say what I want.
I'm not encouraging like creating dangerous.
We're not
I
treating
think we
the
need to have the
roads.
next meeting because we need to make sure we have everything lined up.
For all these
a
events.
day. Yes. So, but I think we need to have a short next meeting.
And to make up for
And
this
we're
one?
not gonna be talking about zoning or saldo or anything like
No, we
that.
will not. That's a promise
It would be more of an abbreviated meeting to
to prepare.
prepare for the
It would
events that
only
are
be
coming up
three
in
of
the spring.
us. It would be you, me, and Kate, because these two guys have to table unless you see.
Unless you move it to 5
Unless
o'clock.
we move it to
No,
5 o'clock.
don't tell me things
But
starts
then-
at 6.
The town
So
is
I would
starts
think
at
that we need
6.
to be there by 5,
We've got to be there Saturday.
so unless it's a 3 o'clock meeting.
Madam Chair, can I say one thing before you get up? I would recommend, and you can just say so moved as soon as I'm done, that you make a motion to pass on to the board of supervisors the zoning and saldo as discussed, and all comments made tonight will be taken under advisement by the board of
I
supervisors.
second that.
Someone has to make that, so say so moved.
I'll motion for
So moved, second.
You're
Now
gonna be
vote.
writing it, so it doesn't.
Well, I want it on record, because that's what we do with
I
planning.
can get the test.
That way, anything said tonight is on record.
As long as it's recorded.
It's recorded.
All in favor?
You're
Alright,
gonna
thank
make a recommendation about next month's meeting.
I didn't want you. I didn't want-
No solution.
Is 3
Okay,
o'clock
you got that?
And if there's anything that anybody here missed, we can certainly as residents send it to the board. as
Yeah.
well. We talked about a lot.
What, I missed that, would you say?
If there's something that one of us thinks about that we didn't discuss tonight,
Just send
we
it,
can
pass it
certainly
along.
present to the board as a resident, we're all residents. of the
Oh,
town.
we can do that as a resident, but not as a EAC. Right,
Yep.
right. Okay. Okay, so for the next meeting,
I'll come, I'll just get stuff for my.
then you will hear.
I'm okay with that.
You're-
Actually,
no,
I
you're-
just like the social part of this.
All right, we're going to have to hold the meeting as planned,
What time?
same as usual,
Okay,
because the 5 o'clock, which wouldn't make a difference.
okay.
Because the events basically starts at 5. It starts at 6, but the people who table have to go early.
Right, so we have to get in there with everything, set everything up.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that's,
Can you talk him into going to the Newburgh Inn after the meeting? Talk to those of us that missed his.
So tell me, you
presentation.
can come sit in the meeting.
yeah, you enjoy it. You know what you're doing.
Actually, one more thing. Let's say at the woman from the Bucks County Conservation, whatever, on Ferry Road. Karen was at oh, you were there, right?
Yeah.
At the-
Yeah.
She was talking about
The women's farm garden.
wanting EACs to be at the watershed plant sale.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have a table there in
So,
set.
all right, we're set.
We're
The
set.
EACs can be there.
You're
They
you're
wanted
gonna help.
I will.
All right, Jerry, you're on.
Huh?
Jody, you're on. Want to come help? Help on it. I'll explain later. Yeah, no, we're set.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion.
go ahead, make it.
I'd like to make a motion for
Okay, second. Anybody second? She wants to adjourn.
So Dave.
I second.
You have
All in
already
favor?
tried.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.